Hey, it's Scott with Forster Products. We've got a new face with us today. Usually we've got Josh, and it's new for you people, but it's someone I see all the time. Vince Alber, you do. Maybe you want to kind of introduce, say some of the things you do at Forster, even though we only have an hour, so they can try and keep that.
Yeah, I've been with Forster for almost 5 years now, and do a lot of kind of our technical drawings and some of the manufacturing, figuring out, and just kind of the day-to-day maintaining of the shop and making sure we have all the tools we need to do the day-to-day jobs.
Tools and donuts and whatever, whatever's
donuts
required
every Thursday
to keep that going.
Yeah.
So, you were kind of came into Forster right at the time of transition between the ownership, which we've talked about here in the past, and kind of people noticing some differences as far as we had that last, not just the last podcast, I think the one before, where we had Rod Hartman in here, kind of the previous owner, who we talked about a lot of new things that he had done. And, the latest new thing he had done was like the datum dial, which was a big deal, but that now, time flies, was like 2012. So, coming in that 2020 time frame, I think myself, I in it every day, notice a lot, but there's been a lot more new things happening at Forster. What do you think was kind of gave Forster the ability to do some of those new things?
Yeah, I think kind of when I came in, there's quite a big backlog. So before getting into the new things, I think it was just kind of trying to chip away at some of the lower hanging fruit of improving manufacturing processes to improve the throughput. So just an investment in new machines, fixturing, changing the process a little bit to speed things up. And also investing in people too, so because it does take manpower to make more product. You gotta obviously have a few more people.
Right, so. Not necessarily an easy task when you're looking at kind of trying to combine. You've got people like the Dave Smiths of the shop that have been there 30 years and plus years, and Fern and shipping in 40 some years, and then kind of trying to bring in a lot of new. I mean, it's honestly that battle of the minds only makes us better in the end. Well, why are we doing it this way? Well, because we've always done it that way. And then,
that's a hard habit to break. But
right.
When there's a need, when there's an itch, you got to scratch it.
Right. So then, I mean, we kind of got the where now, we for a long time didn't sell a coax press to anybody through our website directly, because it's hard when you're over 1,000 of them in the hole to distributors to try to service that need. Well, now they're available. You can finding a distributor that has them, that was a big problem that we've got corrected, that is now allowing us to do some of these new things. And so, like in this episode, I think we want to kind of highlight some of those new things, because one of the things that we're maybe not always the best at is we're pretty good at making new things and not always really great at letting people know that we then have them. Always. Yeah. And so maybe we can kind of go through some of those that we've done over the time, and then we've got kind of at the end some pretty exciting news, I think, of what we're going to do, present at SHOT Show, and still probably keep some other things secret that we just release at SHOT Show, just to give you a good reason to show up to the booth still. So, I mean, kind of out of the gate, we kind of introduced a couple of bangers in my mind that have done really well, things like the neck tension gauges and the Accurings. But kind of in short, when you look at like those two, even just around those tools, what would you say, Vince, like when you go to make a new product, what things are you considering when you go to do that?
Yeah. First is kind of actual demand. And that comes from mostly customer feedback. You can get a call and say, hey, I'm looking for a die for my 6.8 banana launcher and
Yeah.
all. Oh yeah, you'll sell tons of them. I know all 4 people in the world that
Right.
shoot this. But so figuring out what the actual demand is and seeing if it's viable, and then 2, if it's a new product like the neck tension gauge, we already made a screwdriver, so we had a source for the handles, and then the turning and the grinding. Pretty simplistic manufacturing process there. So being able to decide if we can make it affordable, and then just kind of a collaborative effort then to say,
Right.
hey, is this something we should move forward with?
Right. Yeah, and I think, you said pretty simplistic manufacturing, and it's pretty simplistic for us because we've been doing turning and grinding all the time. So, but just that consideration of like, are we the right person to make it?
Does it fit into our core competencies?
Right. Something I think of, like, we get asked for a lot are things like a decapping die. And it's like, we might not be the best ones to make that, in just being that there's some already ones that work really well that are priced right. So, I mean, once we can find that need of, hey, this is what's missing in decapping dies, we're not going to really point our time at doing some of those things like that. Or like you say, the 6.8 banana launchers, like it, we do filter some of those demands, and sometimes you got to listen to those, because it's like, you run that through the filter of Josh or a shooter that's like, what, actually that has this and this and this potential. And some of those things will lead us off to do those kind of oddball things. Yeah. But for the most part, we try to, I think right when we got to that point of, hey, we're caught up with what we have, or certainly can see the horizon of where we are. This is an exciting opportunity for us to do new things and put new things, teach our manufacturing people to make new things and offer some things to our customers. It was kind of like we had a pile of all this old information of, hey, there's all these things we should be doing. And that wasn't always the best either. And I think we kind of talked to our pro staff, Kelly Bashan, who works in a much larger manufacturing facility. And I think he kind of sat us down and really told us the right way to do that. So how, like you say, we're looking at the customer and we're looking at our abilities. How does that fit in to that decision making of how we're kind of charting that out?
Yeah, that organizational chart that Kelly kind of showed us is a really good way to pick, like I said, that lowest hanging fruit of, hey, we have X product, X new product. It has what we think is, this high of a impact on the market. Now, what's the likelihood of us being actually able to manufacture that, and what's the timeline of that?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a simple thing that probably a lot of people on here have used in some facet or another, but yeah, we just simply charted out impact and likelihood, and those things that end up being the highest impact, both to us, but mostly our customers, because it will then be us. And then what's our likelihood of being able to do it? Well, if we have to buy a new machine and train 12 new people, and it may have a really high impact, but the likelihood of us being able to do it is pretty low. So, it's been a great decision maker for us on a lot of that. So things like, one of the first things that was right in that top right-hand corner that people were asking for, and we definitely had the ability to do. We started making like that XL press and the big dies. And, fortunately that, maybe you want to explain for those that don't know kind of what that all entailed, of what the XL press is, what market does it feed, and what went into making that.
Yeah. I think, just the thought behind it was we're kind of capped at the size cartridge we can load in the standard coax at around the 338 Lapua. And I think it was NRA show 3, maybe 4 years ago when we were across the booth from KDEX and got to talk to Chase and Lauren Stroud, and kind of threw out the idea of, how would a larger coax go? Yeah. And somewhat got his blessing of, the ELR market. At that time, I don't think either of us knew quite what the ELR market was, but he kind of shared, it's bigger than you think. These shoots sell out in minutes of it going live. And so kind of just dove into that and, try to squeeze out some precision in the Shy-Tech and Barrett reloading process. And then just, the standard coax is a great design, older design, but pretty tried and true, and just scaled it up from there. The different, obviously, manufacturing processes, the demand's it's a smaller market, so we weren't going to invest in a pattern at a foundry, so that kind of led us to the decision of making it a steel frame, and
which really adds to the cost of the manufacturing of it. You go from a sub $30 to sub $1 basically molding clay block that you machine to now a plus over $100 block that hasn't even been machined yet to get to there. But kind of like you said, talking to Chase and stuff, it was like, we didn't really have the understanding of what was on the market now. And when he's saying like, well, people are doing this to this press, or they're importing this really expensive one from Italy to do this, it's like, well, this is silly that there's not something better for our people in the state. Arguably the U.S. has the biggest ELR market, and they're bringing presses in from other countries that don't even have that. So it was just, I kind of cut you off on that manufacturing part, but it's like it came at a cost, and that was something that we didn't really want to put on to our customers. But then it was kind of Chase enlightening us of like, no, you don't understand what cost is coming on them to begin with. They're importing a press that's going to be more expensive than what you're thinking anyway, and they have to ship it across the ocean. So
yeah, just the availability of having it was one of the determining factors as well.
Right. And then that came with some other challenges of we didn't want it to be, if you think of like Hornady and RCBS and some of those presses that are available for that, it's like you can only do this as your BMG press. You are only doing these big dies. So we wanted to keep that versatility that we have in the standard press and put that into the XL press.
Yeah, definitely wanted to accommodate the BMG, and that's kind of what our, we're punching through the BMG primer with the with the die, and we have to open up this hole to allow that. And
we were really fortunate to have a BMG enthusiast that was pretty respected, just down the road from us, and that we let him break several things before we got to where we ended up with it, and he was running, to speak to that different press, he was running a Corbin press, which wasn't that press isn't really, that's not its main function. A swaging press, and he felt in the end that ours sized the cases easier and things in that. Well, that's all attributed to, we can't take any credit for that. That all goes back to Dean Purdy and his physics on the mechanical advantage that's built into the coax already.
Yeah. So, like I said, just a scaled up the coax itself has a pretty strong mechanical advantage, and you make it bigger, that mechanical advantage just increases.
Yeah, and I mean when we were talking like some of those initial products we brought out, like the neck tension gauge and AccuRing, I mean pretty simple side steps to things we already make, and this you could look at it as a sidestep, but it was really like, you know, we're changing completely how we're holding parts, completely the type of material we're machining into. This was a pretty big learning block for us as far as, hey, how do you bring out something new and develop it? And you know, I think we've since then gotten more efficient at what we've been doing. But the one thing that kind of comes to mind that, you know, when we had the ownership change, Bob Ruck, you know, who was one of the, I mean, really helped build Forster to what it is as far as getting it out in front of Brownells and Midway USA and internationally to different countries. I mean, a big proponent of our I don't know, champion of Forster Products, really. We were like, hey, we've got this. We set in our mind we're going to bring the XL press to SHOT Show, and we're going to bring it this year.
It wasn't a finished product.
Was not finished. We were not there. And Bob very strongly was like, I don't think that's a good idea. No one ever does that. You don't want something to come to SHOT Show and, you know, it's almost like
not be a finished product.
Yeah, you don't want to take your ungroomed mutt to the dog show, you know. And we went against that and we brought it, and there were probably some looks and feels of people pulling the handle that were like, oh, this doesn't seem like the Forster Products. But for most of them, when we were like, this is a prototype, we're getting it here out in front of the customer so that we could get some feedback. Boy, we found we got some invaluable feedback. There were some things just as simple as, I think we had it set up as the color black. Yeah. And who was it that? It was
Brandon with Shields. Oh, no. This has got to be the Forster red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were like, well, we were going to make it black because it would be something different. And this is in. He's like, nope, it's got to be red. And it's like, you know, the more you thought about it, you're like, gosh, dang it, he's right. Yeah. It does have to be. And it 100% would not have been if we didn't do that.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was kind of, and to Bob's credit, I mean, I think when he came back, he was kind of like, you know what, that ended up being the right thing to do, in that, you know, you always run the risk of like, oh, what if someone else sees it and they go and make it the same way, and you know what? That's their grave. They gotta make that right with Jesus at the end themselves. You know, I don't think that's something that we're gonna get. And fortunately, in our industry, most people have a lot of respect for that. You know, that this is mine. The coax press is yours. This is mine. We're gonna make our own spin on it.
No one's looking to rob anyone's cradle too much.
No, right. And that's not saying that there isn't, but that's just not you know, our goal is to do that likelihood impact. And to me, the likelihood of someone stealing it is lower than the impact of what it is going to be to actually have that customer feedback on it. So that's, I think going forward, and we did it last year with we brought our powder measure with the micrometer adjust. I mean, that's probably even an understated, pretty big difference that we made to that tool that people have been asking for a very long time. And now we've got probably one of the more complete powder throwers that's there. You were shooting in a match this weekend, and like everybody was loading way in advance, you know,
the day before.
Right. And, you know, you were just, when you were throwing that, we're just kind of commenting about, like, you know, usually you kind of work with Josh and he's got all his line of auto throwers and tricklers, but I mean, you were kind of commenting that it worked pretty well.
Yeah. And it actually was the older iteration, and just that initial setup, it was kind of a pain in the butt to kind of fine tune it to throw approximately a grain short to trickle up. But once it was set, it ran fine. I shot the night before. SDs was 7, so it's all just kind of the year process and making it fine tuned.
Right. But just, I mean, it's nice too. We don't always have the opportunity to run the products as much as our customers do. But it's always kind of reassuring when something works as we say that it should work. And sometimes, I think that's a risk in some of your older tools that have been out there a while, is that again, you just make them the way you've always made them, and it in theory should be the same, but who's watching and checking that? And now having some pro shooters and stuff that are running our stuff more, we've got kind of that self check.
Yeah, it's nice to get immediate feedback on, hey, this is what we're thinking. We can make 10 of them, send them out, and if something needs to be changed or tweaked, we can pretty easily do that. And
we're not in a non-critical market. If you compare to, I don't have a really great comparison, but like, our average, if you had to say describe the average reloader, what are some descriptive words you would use for that?
See, there's so many different reload. Are you a bulk reloader? Are you just loading hunting rounds?
But if you had to say, if you had to describe the average Forster Products reloader, who is that?
I'd say particular. A lot of the times. Detailed. Sometimes you kind of flirt on the line of my hobby is shooting, and because my hobby's shooting, then I reload. We flirt on the line of, well, now my hobby's starting to be reload, and the shooting is the secondary to that.
They've got SDs of 25 and they're shooting one hole groups, but gosh, I should be at the 7.
Yeah.
And why? What am I doing wrong? What do I got to do?
And they're not incorrect.
No.
The goal is to be as consistent as possible.
No, absolutely.
And so a lot of the times customers will say, take everything out of the equation. That way, if there's an error downrange, I know it's on me and not my ammo or rifle or anything, any other part of the equation. It's on them. So
I guess I think of the analogy, like if I had a bowl of chocolate chip cookies and one was stale and I put it in the preschool room, you probably would never have the feedback that you had that one stale one. But now if we make one powder measure that doesn't throw within that 1/10 of a grain, and we throw it out to all the reloaders, we will be let known that this one did not do it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just I feel like we want to take a lot of those intricate steps to be sure that when something goes out, it goes out right the first time. And that's not always easy to do. You're going to have some things that you're going to have to be reactive and make some changes and look at things. I think of things like the curved linkage that we brought out. It definitely solved a need of, there were some other ones out there that, aftermarket ones out there that had no stop whatsoever. And you designed the stop in the ones that we have. And, it served that need. But then we did find that on some, if they strong arm it at the bottom with the leverage of where the stop pins are at that, they could flex and change that depth some. So, I mean, we've kind of changed our tune in the advertising and probably future offerings of, hey, put one straight link on and one curved, so you have that more consistent stop at the bottom. So, let's say we did a lot of testing of those before we sent them out, and we're doing really consistent, but there's some things you're just not going to know until it gets out to the masses. You're not always accounting for I think the first one that I had where someone commented they were having issues with the curved links, and you're like, oh, how hard are you stopping at the bottom? And he's like, well, I bench 700 pounds. So you're like, well, okay, well, I guess we didn't do that. Through our testing, we didn't bring that bodybuilder into.
It's easy to, for us to test. We're sizing 308,
right.
65 Creed.
Right.
There's going to be be larger cartridges that size a lot harder than those. So,
actually, the way you wildcat a 6.8 banana shooter is by necking down a 375 enabler from, So yeah, that sizing differences, and we take a lot of that feedback to heart, and we will shift gears in the middle if it's not working out for that. So I guess, one of the areas that we've made, when you make an XL press or a micrometer powder measure or a neck tension gauge, or what we'll talk about later, like an Arbor die conversion kit, these are kind of flashy things in the reloading market. We've done a lot in our gunsmithing line that it's not as flashy, because if I have a Headspace gauge in this caliber and I hold it to this caliber, they certainly don't look a lot different than that. But that's something that kind of just recently we're seeing a pretty big change in what we're offering at Forster. And maybe you want to start off telling us some of like what we're doing with Headspace gauges right now.
Yeah, just again improving the process and making it a lot quicker from bar stock to finished product.
Right.
Allows us to expand that offering. And then as far as, we like to stick with the SAMI spec cartridges. That way it kind of everyone in the industry is working off the same dimensions. But now kind of reaching out and branching out into some more of the CIPs where you're not head spacing off a datum.
What is the difference, specifically, I guess, between SAMI and CIP?
Yeah. CIP's got some of like the Dasher and BR more standardized, whereas it's not, SAMI doesn't quote unquote recognize that. But mostly the only difference is the tolerancing. You're going to look at a CIP print and say, 25.4, that's way too long to, it's obviously in metric.
Right.
So you do the metric to inches, the dimensions are pretty much the same. And then CIP is just going to be a +4 thou tolerance, whereas SAMI, some of their if you're looking at headspace, the SAMI tolerance is a +10, sometimes +8, depending on the cartridge. But push comes to shove, SAMI versus CIP is just the tolerance.
Right.
Most diameters, lengths are going to be the same.
And it, kind of historically, so SAMI is kind of our United States version of these are your min and maxes on many different things. We look at it pretty specifically in terms of headspace when we're talking here, and CIP is the European version. So historically, when we were talking about the constraints of Forster Products and their machining capabilities, the amount one could put out, it was pretty easy to draw a hard line and say, hey, we're only going to do the SAMI cartridges because that is, like you say, it has a measurement rather than from like a base to a shoulder, base to bottom of shoulder, base to top of shoulder. It has a datum, a mid-range point between that it is And that's that min, max, those lengths, that's what we print on the gauge when we mark on it. And so it was kind of trying to figure out, well, CIP, you know, that if we go by how we're actually going to make them, there's not a length there that we can truly print on a gauge. And that's something that we've always, it's kind of a credibility factor, you know, rather than saying, hey, this is a Forster go, this is a Forster no go. We've been pretty steadfast of like, no, this is the length that we made it to. And it's kind of like, you know, putting your last name on a business. Like, no, this is, we're signing off that this is what we did here. And we didn't have that on the CIP. Plus, you know, 20 years ago, the CIP offerings, you know, and didn't necessarily have things like the dasher, like the, you know, there weren't always some of the predominant, you know, now a lot of those cartridges are predominant in the US, and probably us not making a gauge for people to be able to make rifles was an injustice in a way. So we're kind of what I kind of interrupted you though. We're kind of writing that now. You're kind of looking at and structuring to be able to offer some of those CIP cartridges.
Yeah, just pretty much basic geometry, figuring out, okay, we're going to make it the same. We're going to make a CIP gauge the same as we're going to make the SAMI gauge. So figuring out where that datum is on a given gauge that doesn't necessarily call out a specific base to 400 or 375 datum line.
Right.
What is that supposed to be for the dash or for the BR or X-by-47?
Yep. Yeah. So, and not, I mean, that's a pretty big addition. We'll have those 6, you know, a lot of them are turned off the machine, getting headed to the heat treated and ground now, but it's like dasher, BR, 6.5x47.
Even the Shy-Tech, those larger gauges, Shy-Techs.
The Shy-Techs, those are ones we have added to the docket now. And then we've expanded a lot in even the SAMI offerings that we had. You know, we've made historically we'd made a lot of gauges for like Ruger and Springfield Armory when they're doing some new things, and that gave us some pretty good insights on where the industry was wanting some of those gauges to be. And we kind of had some, okay, the 224 Valkyrie's coming out. Well, can make gauges for that. That's a terrible example, probably.
Flash in the pan.
Yeah, which they're going to have
Yeah.
that, you know, and we've always wanted to try to avoid that to some degree. But, you know, things like, I believe the 6GT is going to be here for a while. I believe the 300 PRC is going to be around for a while. And some of those are gauges we'd made for commercial, but hadn't really made for the public. And now we're offering those. So they say it's not as like flashy bells and whistles like, hey, here's our brand new press at SHOT Show. If you set them on a shelf, no one's gonna see and notice, but are really some pretty big deals for the industry. I think that we're gonna actually have some of those good quality and priced right gauges available.
Yeah, just being able to fulfill a bigger. You already make one thing, but it's not. You already make shoes, but
Yeah.
I need a size 12 shoe.
Yep. Our likelihood's high.
Yeah.
You know, and
we only make 11 and 13 size shoes, not the 12.
Right.
So.
Right. And now I know like on the grinder today is like the 338 Lapua gauges. You know, we're just, some of that changes in tooling allows us to do, you know, we weren't really able to do some of those bigger gauges on the fixturing and stuff that we had. Well, you know, having some time to actually make that right has made a big difference in what our offering is and going forward will be, I'm sure. So, and then the other kind of big thing that we're kind of quietly putting out there, you know, you can go check a video out here probably by the time this releases at Ultimate Reloader that is going to do a review on some of our other newer gunsmithing tools. But that would include like chamber reamers, piloted roughing drills, maybe you in short, condensed, want to tell us what, one, like, why is Forster making chamber reamers, and two, what's going to make our reamers stand out?
Yeah. Probably goes back to before my time at Forster. So I was in the Forster shop before I actually started working there, selling die reamer. Well, initially other tooling, but eventually got the blessing of Dave, I think, to, hey, look at our die reamers. And I think we made some pretty good improvements on solving some issues with cutting the dies. And then just kind of carried over to, why not make a chamber reamer that isn't too far different than what a die reamer
Right.
is. Essentially the same, just spec'd a little bit different. As far as differences go, obviously cutting 12L is going to be a lot different than cutting a stainless chamber. But I think what people are going to find really nice is the ability to easily remove the pilot, that spacing washer that's going to allow coolant to flow through the flutes. It's going to be a lot nicer. And then just the serrations that are ground in the body of the reamer, reducing the cutting pressure and breaking the chip.
Yeah, most people see those serrations and they assume it's a rougher, but that was one of the big things that worked really well in the die manufacturing, where we're essentially, like you say, we're cutting small chambers. But what's the point of those serrations there?
Reducing the cutting pressure and breaking the chip up, kind of in that die cutting. Could get some chatter, cutting pressure's a little bit higher, causing that reamer to chatter a little bit. So just unequally spaced those serrations to reduce that.
That's where I think
chatter and
people see those like serrations in and they think that's going to leave a line or something on the inside, but that's or not cut equally. And when you say, like, that it's leaving some flex or something in the flute, that's going to then change my dimensions.
They're all spaced different from flute to flute,
right.
Just spaced a bit differently. So
right. And I think for, when you think of especially some of those small calibers and those little tiny, having coolant flow through the bushing is important to the customer, I think. And so, having anybody that's ever had to fight a tiny E-clip to change your pilot bushing and then lost it and then, ordered 80,000 of them just out of frustration, or you go to get the screw that has the serrations built into it and you've got to get a special screw that's then only good for that reamer because they screw it in and time the grooves in that screw to match up the grooves in the reamer. This design you guys came up with, where it's a set screw and a washer that has the coolant go through, I think
pretty simple. Just unscrew the cap screw, and if you need a half thou bigger, smaller,
right,
pilot bushing, pretty simplistic way to change it out.
It's probably going to drop like gunsmithing rates everywhere because it's going to, just save them so much time looking for those little stinking E-clips on the ground. So that I think is just going to be a big deal for the customers there. And then, we had before, so sure, we'd tested a lot of the reamers that you guys that we've made for on our dies, but like you say, that's different than cutting a chamber, and we took that back to Josh and kind of had him cut some chambers with it. And in, in the beginning, there was some positive and some negative, you could say returns, but, we've kind of worked a lot of those things out of what's going to work well in there. And, one of the things that I think, Josh would come back with and say, well, this finish on this reamer is not near as nice as the finish on this reamer. And then we kind of get the reamers in, and the difference was that one was high speed and one was carbide. Yeah. Well, you're just plain not going to get the finish out of a high speed versus what you can get out of a carbide. But then that kind of drove the discussion of looking at, hey, how could we do this same reamer in carbide then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with our kind of design at the end of the reamer with that tapped hole that's going to be holding on the bushing, obviously it's not very easy to tap carbide,
right?
Or economical. So just kind of put heads together as far as, okay, we're kind of steadfast, and this is kind of going to be something that makes it better,
right?
Is the easy to remove the pilot. So I think we got a good design moving forward as far as making that front part steel and soldered into the carbide reamer blank. So kind of the best of both worlds there.
Yeah. And if you go to our website now and look at the chamber reamers we have, you can kind of see some of the evolution that we've got. We do have some reamers on there that do have the E-clip out of some of our first runs and stuff. But I think, keeping an eye on our reamer manufacturing is going to be, I can just already see that's going to go really well for us. We've got a lot of good things that are happening there, and some of them are on the website now. So, you need some certain calibers. They're available. We kind of too, in that testing, like I said, we sent it to, had Josh do it, but another place that we worked with was 4D Reamer Rentals. And I believe we sent them like a 7 PRC reamer. And I forget, Dwayne said how many times that one's been sent out, but he really can't wait for us to do more because he just has had really good feedback. It's went really well. And it was important for us to get it in hands like that, where it's going to get in front of a whole lot of different gunsmiths, a whole lot of different places. And then, kind of to transition that, they also recently picked up things like our roughing drills. So maybe, this is a kind of a brand new product to the market as far as I'm aware. Maybe there's something like that, but you kind of came up with a design for a piloted roughing drill.
Yeah. And both Fred and Dwayne kind of gave really good positive feedback on that.
Right.
Essentially, it's just kind of sat down and went through and grouped all the cartridges known to man, or that are popular right now at least, and said these 8 to 10 have a shoulder dimension that's within a few thousandths, and kind of spec'd out a drill to remove material. Obviously, it's going to remove a lot more material a lot faster,
right,
than just running the reamer into the barrel.
So what if you had to put it just briefly, like what are the benefits of what does the piloted roughing drill offer the market that it didn't have?
Sure. Material removal quickly, and it's going to save on your reamer life. So essentially, the body portion of the reamer isn't going to be working near as much as it would without roughing that out.
Right. And I mean, we see a lot of users use a drill anyway, but now this is piloted. So we're going to have a lot better shot of everything being concentric with the bore.
It's going to be true to the bore,
right,
so long as you're trued up in your 4-jaw chuck system.
Right. I think that was something, like you said, Fred and Dwayne at 4D kind of thought pretty positively of it. You know, we always felt in the die manufacturing, the best way to, you know, the most ideal, best clean up everything is if you can run a rougher in. If you can rough it out so that reamer's just barely taking anything out and just truly setting things aside. Well, that's not super economical to have one for each. So now you've got this certain diameter with this certain pilot. You can make that work for a lot of different calibers and you know, just hog a lot of removal out fast and concentric.
Yeah, like just kind of take the 6 mil cartridge, for example, 7/16 diameter, drill diameter. You'll be able to, you know, your Dash or your GT, 6 Creed, all using the same drill rather than a dedicated roughing reamer for each cartridge. So,
Right.
Just make a versatile tool that can service many cartridges.
Yeah. We'll probably have an episode where we bring Josh on to just talk about how he uses it. I know you had like the concept of the idea. I kind of remembered I was in there, Josh is in there, and you and I are like, oh my gosh, this is really good. This is going to work really well. And Josh was like, I don't know, fellas. I don't have a lot of, I don't think he was really completely at the time understanding, you know, was concerned that like the reamer wouldn't clean it all up. And now, I mean, there's hardly a chamber he cuts that he doesn't run that in. And I think it's saved him.
Definitely a time saver.
Definitely a time saver.
The reamer wear is kind of hard to gauge. But,
right.
But the less material that reamer's removing, the longer the life is.
Kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I say, when we look at the gunsmithing, that's probably where we've made a lot of movement here recently, and kind of similar when you look at, like, you know, we talk about tools, big press, and Arbor die conversion, neck tension, very different. But even in our calibers of dies, we've got way more than what we've ever really added. You know, I think I started a brief list of some that are coming here now, but I mean the 338 arc, the 7 backcountry, 416 Rigby, 35 Whalen. You know, some of those, it's the 35 Whalen's not a brand new caliber, but it's definitely something that we've gotten asked for, and we're finally starting to be able to support some of that. And some of that, when you think of like the 416 and the 35, well, we were kind of capped with some of the pieces that we'd made in a standard 7/8 die. Well, us adding that XL line, XL dies and stuff, that gave us a lot more components to play with. Well, now all of a sudden we have 416 expander balls in-house. We have 416 seating stems in-house. Now how do we make those all work in that 7/8 size? So,
yeah, like you said, we didn't ever make a 35 expander ball. Just because we never made that size.
You're right.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, definitely if there's a caliber that you've been really wanting to have a Forster die for, and I'm sure I'm welcoming some comments on things that we're probably still not going to do, unfortunately, that it is the 6/8 banana shooter. But, you know, there's definitely a potential that we're going to have something out there. And I think we had a lot of customers too that it's like, okay, Forster, this one's popular enough. Forster will make it, but I'm going to buy my RCBS set and my Lee set just until that one finally comes, and it'll be in a couple years. They'll get it done. Well, now we're trying to be a lot more reactive and actually get those pieces out. As you know, some of that's kind of a credit to the industry too. You know, it was always like, who's going to go first? Okay, well, if there's not brass for it, then there's not much of a point. And if there's not a bullet for it and there's no rifles for it, well, and then they're going to be like, well, if there's not a die for it, well, I think we're just all kind of collectively, probably out of that time in all of our gun industry lives where there is more time to manufacture. and just being more responsive. And I think that's just going to add to some people developing and doing a lot cooler things as we continue to move forward here.
Yeah, I think it's always, we kind of rely somewhat on Hornady's marketing.
Right.
They get behind the PRC and the 338 ARC and some of those newer cartridges that people get excited about, and it's a little easier to,
it's going to work. They build a system now. It's going to work. And that's we've said it on here before. I mean, availability is an ability, and they've certainly done a good job as far as making some things available. Mm-hmm. So now that's where someone will wildcat that into something else, and we'll make that. But what we can kind of get to that point now of like, what new do you have in plan for SHOT Show this year? And some of it I think is out already. People can look for and get, but what are some of the new things you're looking at for SHOT Show?
Yeah, if we kind of just back up and look at like seeding a primer, I feel we have two pretty good systems in place to do that. One on the coax. I know it's a little bit slower, but you're talking very consistent seeding of the primer, one at a time, however. And then the bench-mounted coax primer seeder, just the ability to speed things up.
It's efficient. Yeah. It's your Honda, it's just efficient.
But kind of one thing we get asked quite a bit is, where's the stop, or how do I adjust this? I want to seed them deeper. So kind of sat down, scratched heads, and put pencil to paper as far as we know this is a need of having a tool seed a primer in thousands increments. So that's kind of in the works, in process, and something that we're hoping to have ready in January.
Yeah, and the plan is to kind of do it similar to what we've talked about earlier. Bring it out as here's a prototype, what it is, and we've kind of used this as the decision to go into this was kind of after that review of looking at what's on the market now, and do we, Forster Products, have something to offer to make this, priced well and a quality product that our customers are expecting. And I think we were able to, in our initial review, kind of check all those boxes. So now it's just kind of a lot of the harder final work of finessing, making sure that when we put those cookies out there, we don't have a stale one anywhere, just kind of getting that process right.
Yeah. And I think looking at the finished product, it'll be quite obvious. Oh yeah, that looks like a Forster, just because it's going to utilize some things we already make, and just gives us the ability to make it affordable. Now then it's just kind of on us to make sure it's made right.
There's always those things that we've already kind of feel that we've perfected. How we're gripping the case. We don't want to have someone to require a whole bunch of other tools to be able to make it work. And we've never really been a company that's operated under the philosophy, well, if they'll pay for it, they'll pay for it. We want to find that balance of quality and priced right. And I think we've got, when we looked at our likelihood impact chart, we had some very good things in lines of primers, and our, the impact the customer's been telling us they want to be able to have some more adjustment there.
Me personally, I can't say that a primer should be seated at X depth, but I think there's enough data out there to kind of back that statement up. So
I think there's a question that Nick from Peterson would ask a lot of, like, can you shoot the difference? And that offends a lot of people, but me, absolutely not. I cannot shoot the difference. So But we work with a lot of shooters that can shoot that difference and do see that difference. So
that just goes back to the taking everything out of the equation and making everything more consistent,
right,
to where you are the limiting factor.
Exactly, which has been super easy for me in life. I think, to be sure. Yeah. But then one of the other things that we have on the website now that we have a video on our YouTube page of Josh showing how to use it is that Arbor die conversion kit, and that one's kind of a product of, we were doing a lot of testing of bullet seating and things like that, and wanting to kind of root cause, hey, what is causing this bullet to get damaged by our seating stem? And so kind of working with the amp press that can measure that seating force. It was kind of crippling for us to not always have a seater die for the cartridge we wanted to look at. So we'd get a customer's cases and bullets in, and we don't have the right Wilson die to test that out. And at the same time, now we're working with a Wilson stem that isn't matching ours. So we'd kind of made, I don't know, I'd put some pieces of pipe together, and Josh called it the pipe bomb, but then it really kind of worked for what we needed to do. And then you kind of took it in and perfected it. And that's kind of the nice thing of a small company too, is that we're literally 15 feet away working with the pipe bomb while Vince is over here you idiots, this could be made better. Let's draw this up. And that, I think this coming in a pack like this, I think it's going to give our reloaders like to try things. Is seating with an Arbor press better? I don't think so with the alignment that the coax press has, but in your situation, it might be. Well, now you've got a pretty inexpensive option that you can go over and take your standard Forster seater die you already have and put it into your amp press or your other Arbor press and actually seat a bullet. So,
and kind of the design of the Forster seater too, which people may not realize, is it is made pretty similar to an Arbor die, just in that it's pretty much an oversized chamber with a tight through channel,
right,
where that seating stem comes into play. So yeah, it's got kind of obvious that, well, we had a 6.5 Creed Arbor die. Well, now we're getting tech calls on, a 6GT rather than getting all these different Arbor dies in. It just, I think, kind of going back to Rod, he didn't like having all the bushings for the datum file, so he's like, well, I'll just make something that's going to make it easier for us to test out in-house.
Yeah.
And hey, actually, this would be kind of a helpful consumer product. So
I know I go back to one of it was one SHOT Show where there was and I won't name the bullet or anything. It doesn't really matter at this point, but it was one that we were really having trouble seating the bullet with. And so talked to the manufacturer and it's like, hey, could you, enlighten me with anything? Obviously you've got loaded rounds of this. What are you doing to seat that well? Because I feel it's in both yours and my interest that ours works well with the bullet that you have. And the comment was, well, you won't get it because in the shop we use one that we've, EDM machined out to be specific to this. So then that works out, all I'm hearing is expensive dollar signs for the customer. So there's so many times that in the shop, you'll make something to do something that the customer has to do. And it's it doesn't work.
Feasible,
it's not
really
feasible. Where this one was gosh, this is feasible. Why should we hold at Forster the rights and the ability to do this? Let's make it more marketable. We've got one en route to New Zealand for the amp guys to kind of do some testing that they can, be sure everything is measuring the same. But we're confident enough with the testing we've done that even if you're not measuring pressure, it's going to allow you to seat the bullet with a cedar die. So yeah, lots of new things. And, like I say, we definitely saved some things back that we intend on having there at SHOT Show that I'm pretty stoked about. And, appreciate the work you do, Vince. I, see you every day at Forster, but a lot of times it's more like problematic things. It's kind of nice to sit down for an hour and just look back and go, hey, that really worked out well. And these are the things we're actually excited about. Just taking that 30-foot view or 30,000-foot view away from the what we're doing is certainly nice to do off and on.
Yeah, it's always good to look back and reflect, and like you said, exciting times coming forward, I think.
I say you've been there 5 years. I've been, close, heading on 15, and it's definitely been able to see that movement and the progression, and it's exciting not only for myself, but I think for our customers too. So thanks again.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Scott.
Yep.